So I think the title says it all. Perfectionism. A lot of maybe just about every artist that I know, and believe me, I know a lot of artists, struggles with this to some degree or identifies as a perfectionist to themselves to some degree. Um, and it can be a problem. It doesn't have to be though. But we almost always kind of view it as a negative statement, like, oh, such a perfectionist, right? And honestly, it can be. It can lead to low self-esteem. It could also lead you to feeling handcuffed to a certain project. You just cannot get past the fact that it's not where you have decided it should be, or at your level. But what if I told you that there was a healthy version of perfectionism? Because there are two versions. There's this neurotic perfectionism, the kind of perfectionism that you allow it to define you, almost to the point where anything comes second. Um, Family, friends, sometimes eating, bathing. You are so obsessed with your work and you are so hyper focused on it and getting it perfect that everything else in your life can suffer. Now, that's an extreme case, but there are those out there, and there might be more of you than you're not even quite aware of that might be leaning more in that direction than you even know. It takes a certain level of self awareness, especially when you're so involved with something. A neurotic perfectionist is known to define themselves by their achievements. That's fine, but it's they experience this debilitating depression when they don't achieve what they set out to do. It cripples them. It breaks them down. It can put them into depression. And along with all those things that they put second, a lot of times their health comes second as well. If you think about that logically, your work is going to suffer. I go back to the Karate Kid Part 3. Your enemy can't breathe, he can't fight. Your enemy can't see, he can't fight. If you're having trouble and you're not sleeping, you're not hydrating, you're not doing the things to help sustain your life, you're never going to achieve perfectionism and you'll just get into a further funk. A healthy perfectionist, on the other hand, is positively motivated. They might still define themselves as a perfectionist, but they use those high standards as a guideline more than a rule. And just like anybody else, whether they are a neurotic perfectionist or a healthy perfectionist, they will experience failure because, as we all know, perfection is not something that can be achieved, at least in the overall sense of the word. But rather than letting these failures define them, because the perfectionism might define you and then the failure defines you and then just things go down, they think to them as exactly what they are, learning experiences, and they try to learn from them and improve themselves. And this is a much more productive use of time and energy because we are going to fail. I do these videos. Sometimes I think to myself, okay, this is the one. This video is going to get 40,000 views, 50,000 views, 100,000 views, however many views. And it gets like 900. And then other times I just come up here and I'm just kind of speaking my mind, and next thing I know, it's like one of the most popular videos. I have yet to understand the science behind it all. But with that being said, I can think that video that I think is going to get that 50,000 views is a perfect video. I nailed it. My jokes or whatever I was saying was on point. I looked particularly handsome. I mean, right now I'm a little verklempt, but verklempt. Yeah, I'm froofy. Yeah. It's been a while since I've got a, yeah. So if you're afraid that you might lean more towards the neurotic, negative, dark side of perfectionism, how can we bring you back? How can we start to shift to a healthy perfectionist? My father used to say to me, the world is not black and white, it's shades of gray. But I've taken that to another step. I've actually told my dad, I don't believe that anymore. The world is not black and white, and the world is not shades of gray. The world is in full color. It is 3D, all around us, surrounds us, penetrates us, controls all living things. It is all colors, okay? And with that means there are so many sides and so many angles that you can come at things with. So there's got to be a way that you can break free of that all or nothing mindset, because we know that that's the truth. If you live in an all or nothing world, you're going to experience half of what life has to offer. I mean, think about that. If chocolate is the only flavor that you are willing to have, well, I mean, if you're going to say chocolate, then obviously people think vanilla, then you're going to miss out on vanilla. But my point is, if chocolate's it, you're going to miss out on strawberry. You're going to miss out on what? Dole Whip, Rocky Road. Thank you. Mint chocolate chip. What'd you say?
Cookies and cream.
Cookies and cream. Will, name your ice cream. Ice cream. What'd you say?
Rocky Road's mine.
Rocky Road.
Chunky Monkey.
We need to find balance. Okay, going back to the Karate Kid, balance is important. Also, the Star Wars. Balance is just a good thing in all my favorite movies. I don't think they address balance in Back to the Future, but maybe one day we can add that in there. It's about finding the moderation in everything, because we like to overindulge as people sometimes. Overindulge in food, overindulge in television. Overindulge all the time, and finding balance and moderation. There's this law of diminishing returns where if you only allow yourself a little bit of it, it's just you savor it that much more than if you just expect to give it to yourself all the time. It just loses what's special, whatever that thing is. And I also want to point out that whole thing, the difference between the student and the master. We always need to keep this in mind, that the difference between the student and the master is the master has failed more times than the student has ever tried. So failure is part of mastery, okay? Mastery is the road to perfectionism, or how we improve. I don't even want to use perfectionism as the word. We are trying to achieve mastery and comfort, and I think that really is what it breaks down to. Is I'm telling you right now, nothing will ever be perfect, right? But when you reach mastery level, you've already understood that. You've already realized, okay, I'm not going to reach this utopia perfection of this is what was it in Seinfeld? This is a perfect triangle. Look at that. It's a nice triangle. It's not about that. It's about finding the confidence and comfort within you to say, it's done. This is what I like. This is it. And that's fine. And hopefully others will like that. But not, if it's not liked by others, not taking that as a knock to your self-esteem, not taking that as a knock to yourself as an artist, as a creator. It's all about how we interpret the data that's coming in and our actions that follow that. When I think about that all or nothing, it really is an ultimatum you're giving yourself, right? Like, if it's like, this is going to be perfect, or I'm never doing art again, or any of these statements, you're basically giving yourself an ultimatum, and I don't know a single person that enjoys an ultimatum. So the fact that you would be doing that to yourself, well, that's just silly, right? And I'll tell you this, often all or nothing ends with nothing or nothing. It usually doesn't end well. I mean, I can't think of a single ultimatum that I've been given or, have maybe given in the past that ended positively for anybody. It's not the way people want to be treated, generally, So in terms of how we can, flip to that healthy perfectionist, intentionally do things imperfect, okay? What do I mean by that? I did an artist problem years ago, and you can find it on our YouTube channel, called the Throwaway Journal. And what is the Throwaway Journal? It's a book that you tell yourself, I'm just going to throw this away. Now, I usually choose to find a nice journal, not the most beautiful journal, not something that I'm afraid is going to be too precious, but, a reasonable journal where if I happen to make something great, then great, it's on acid-free paper, it's on the correct substrate. But the point is, I'm going into this journal every time I apply any kind of pencil, pen, marker, any kind of mark to the paper, it is with the intention of I am going to throw this all away when it's done. And I got to tell you something, for me, it is so liberating. It is so liberating to go there, and it's almost like not giving a darn about anything. It allows you to just say, this don't matter. I'm throwing it away. And it's very freeing. It's very liberating. Neurotic perfectionists often end up with more creative block. They often will burn out more than a healthy perfectionist, I mean, it's a lot you're putting on yourself. And if you're completely defining yourself by this one thing or this one project or your role as a perfect artist, and everything else comes second, you're gonna burn out. All the joy is gonna be sucked out of it. And I think that when it comes to people that are really that master level, right, where they've hit mastery, they'll be the first to say, "I'm still learning." In fact, it's almost not even like about being like humble about it. It's just like, no, they understand that part of mastery is a continued education, and really, in order to achieve that mastery, it's not about being motivated by perfectionism. It's not about being motivated by money. The people that have really reached mastery, and I'm talking about more than just fine art. I'm talking about comedy. I'm talking about business. The people that reach mastery have a genuine love for what they do. They love it. They live and breathe it. Now, some of the people that come to the studio are that have worked here in the past have been just obsessed with video. Now, not unhealthy obsession. I'm talking about that healthy perfectionism, but they live and breathe video production. Reading articles, always tweaking lights. They just love it, and it drives them and it motivates them. So if this perfectionism, this neurotic perfectionism, is making you unhappy, and it's taking away your love of the game, then you're never going to reach mastery. It just won't happen because you don't have the love for it. That your passion will start to die, and the passion's got to fuel it. You'll also find that most neurotic perfectionists get very caught up in small details. These little details, if you look at it, generally in the long run become very unimportant. These little things. And you can make the analogy to a fight that you had with your significant other, right? And like, oh, this relationship is over. How could we? And over the course of your life, it just becomes this little blip. Maybe it was this giant mountain at the time, but I always try to ask myself, how will this affect me tomorrow? How will this affect me in 5 years? And if it's not going to affect me in 5 years, I really need to take whatever that strong emotion I'm feeling with a grain of salt, and take a breath and proceed appropriately. Because if I act out of anger or any extreme emotion, that could mean it will affect me in 5 years. If I end a relationship because of one fight, well, that's the end of it, right? Where if I find a way to make it work because that's what's right for me at the time, or whatever the situation may be, you're not throwing away the baby with the bathwater. Also, a neurotic perfectionist is overanalyzing constantly. They're constantly reworking and rerunning and redoing in their head. And this can often lead to a failure to act. So if you are constantly analyzing, you might never even get started on a project, or you'll get to a point and then you'll be like, well, how do I proceed from here? And you just obsess. You obsess about this thing, and then that failure to act happens. You just like I said at the beginning, you just get handcuffed and you can't move forward. I struggle with, and I think everybody here will vouch for this, and definitely my wife, I struggle with indecision. I don't want to get it wrong. I want to get it right. And you have to take risks, and that's eventually what it comes down to. But literally asking me what I want for lunch can turn into a 35-minute ordeal of me going well, am I really that hungry? Do I want to take in those calories? Well, if I get food, how much will it cost? How long will it take? Is Will going to buy today, or do I have to buy? I mean, these are the things that come to my mind. What is your goal? What is it that you're actually trying to do? Because even though you might define yourself as a perfectionist, that's not your goal. Your goal is not to be a perfectionist. Your goal is something. What is your goal? And then ask yourself, those that have achieved that goal or something similar to it, how did they go about doing it? Were they behaving the way that you were? Were they behaving differently? Sometimes we can learn from other people's experiences to help us on our own path. There's this rule that we have in retail, because when I first started working for my family business, it was in the retail division. And it's called the 80-20 rule. And for those of you that don't know what the 80-20 rule is, it is that 80% of your sales come from 20% of your merchandise. So out of that store, out of 100% of the items we sell in the store, 20% of it makes up for 80% of the sales. Now, how do we equate this to our art? We want to focus on the 20%. The 20% of the details will make up for 80% of the overall impression of the art. So when you're looking at that, focus on the 20%. What is the most important thing? If you are doing a portrait, right? I will say that a lot of times, if you're getting caught up on an ear, but the ear is not the subject, it's not like a portrait of a piercing, right? I mean, what do people look at? They look at the eyes, they look at the nose, the mouth, the eyes especially. That's your 20% in there. Generally, the 20% is that's where the life comes from. Or if you just have these dull, dead eyes, it can take away no matter how beautiful the rest of the portrait is. If the eyes don't speak life, people are not going to relate to it as easily. How do you talk about yourself to yourself? Are you treating yourself with love and kindness? Are you understanding and forgiving of yourself? We expect other people to treat us with some respect, but a lot of times we're not treating ourselves with respect, and we put ourselves down, and it can be very deprecating. I don't want it. I have this thing about being self-defecating, and it's not appropriate. Self-deprecating. Thank you. What to say when you talk to yourself is, I think there's like books on that. Like literally, like what are these things you're internalizing that you're telling yourself that become true because you say it enough to yourself. So make sure that you are conscientious of, is what I'm saying to myself motivating or demotivating me? Like, oh man, I blew that. Man, I could have done better. Oh God, such a loser. You might just say these things and not think about it, but sometimes, especially if it happens more than once or if you just keep thinking about it, it will ingrain like something out of Inception. Like, it's this deep planted belief that you cannot shake. I think it's important that we embrace our flaws. We call this the Tyrion Lannister technique. I think that character did the perfect job of explaining, and I think the very first or second episode, understanding that people will look to the obvious, the flaws, if they want to, make fun of you or attack you or make you feel bad about yourself. But if you own them, and and somebody says, hey, you've got funny hair, and you say, you're kidding, you ain't kidding. Like, I had no idea how to tame this, like, it just takes all the fuel out of the put down, you know what I mean? Like, what they're hoping is to get a reaction out of you, a negative reaction. And if you just react with like, yeah, you got me there, I don't know what to do with it, it takes them out of it. So with that being said, if your art is, in your opinion, flawed, own it. If you did something you don't like, challenge yourself to find at least one good thing that you can say that you did in that thing that you don't like. Now, this is actually something that goes all the way to like a psychology kind of point of view. So I'll give you an example. My wife is a marriage and family therapist, and we often talk about different strategies and techniques to help people kind of focus on what's good rather than what's bad. So sometimes somebody will come in and say, I am just so depressed. I've been depressed for weeks. And so she'll simply ask, all right, so on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the happiest you've ever been and 1 being I can't even really get out of bed depressed, where are you? And generally that person will probably say something like, I don't know, maybe a 3, 2, 3. And that sounds bad, but what does Natasha do? What does my wife do? She says, well, okay, so it's not a 1, it's a 3. Well, what made it a 3? Why aren't you at home in bed? Why did you get up this morning? What motivated you? What was that 20%, or in that case 30%? That's just artist math. What was that 20% that gave you 80% misery? You know what I mean? Excuse me. What was that 20% that can bring you 80% happiness? Because we can focus on just the good things. And we should do that with our art. We should do that with ourselves and give ourselves the credit to do that whenever we feel necessary. And this is the most important thing. This is the kicker. If you're not going to pay attention to anything else I say in this video, this is the line. A healthy perfectionist remembers the spark that motivated them, and they never let go of that. Why did they get started in the first place? It's very important that we always recall what was that initial joy, that feeling, that passion. That is what can be the cornerstone, the inception moment, if you will. So much about being a perfectionist can be healthy if we just simply reframe our thoughts and we focus more on the aspects that we are growing and learning, understanding we're never going to achieve that full perfection, and being comfortable with that to reach mastery levels of whatever it is you are putting your mind to. And it's not about never being satisfied, it's about always learning and knowing that that is part of the process. You might say, oh, I'm never satisfied with this. I always feel I can do better. It's not about that. It's not about being satisfied. It's about understanding that if you've reached that mastery and you think that you've got nothing else to learn, first of all, you haven't reached mastery, but also then what's your motivation to continue? You know what I mean? Like it should be an ongoing thing. You're always honing your craft. You're always working towards something bigger and better than you've done before. You will never actually find perfection, and I think that we all know that, whether we want to admit it or not. But we can find something close, and that's me on Instagram at Mike Not Jerry, where you can see all kinds of fun stuff on there, pictures of my baby boy, fun art memes that I find. I don't know. I'm not like an Instagrammer, but I'm more like a Kelsey Grammer. No, I'm not an okay. So I am an Instagrammer. Okay, I am an okay. I am an Instagrammer, but I'm not a nudnik where like, you know, I'm not gonna like fill your whole like feed with my stuff. Like I post on occasion, you know, and I like to see what people have to say. So just like the video, just like the comments. If this is helpful to you, let me know. Give the video a like if you've made it this far. Hope you subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell to be notified for future videos. All that fun stuff. And with that, I hope that there was something in here that might give you a little bit of peace of mind or might help you kind of reframe how you might have been thinking about your defining yourself as a perfectionist.